Hi everybody, it's ProbablyRed. We are about to do Tech the Deck on Nightmare Blade post the additions. This deck, once again, I'll say is by Kilibovich. And like it's based on his deck. I'll put a link in the description to his version, which is a throne deck. But this is an expedition deck, and basically, I've tried to make it expedition playable with a more limited card pool, um, both for to build the deck and to face against, and trying to take that kind of stuff into consideration. A lot of this deck for me was just like cards that I personally preference, but I tried to keep as close to his original design as possible. So let's go through card by card here and like how well they did and why they're in here still, or why they're in there in the first place from my perspective. I also highly recommend you go check out his deck because he explains why he put his cards in the throne version of this deck. While there are some differences, there's also a lot of overlap. Okay, so first of all, I'd also like to add that I've kind of, for the test deck portion, when this deck ended up and where I'm happier with it currently, is a little bit leaning more on the Minotaur synergy side. There's only two cards, I believe. I believe there's only two cards that really are actually affecting the synergy of Minotaurs, and that's of course Tavrod, because he can draw you Minotaurs and give them a huge buff. And then I've thrown in Relentless Gorehorn, which can have some amazing, amazing swing turns. But we're going to start from the beginning. Headhunter. Why is it in here? It's a one-drop Minotaur, first of all, and it's okay stats. It's like Oni Ronin stats. The only problem is instead of Warcry, it gives you a special power. It says you can pay 2 and twist Headhunter, which makes him a 3/0 in your Void, which actually comes up, used to come up as a kind of a non-bow when I was running Memory Treasure. But you get to play a wanted poster on enemy unit. Headhunter synergizes really, really well with relic weapons and Blight Moth and let's see, Tavrod, kind of, because it makes their creature base or their unit not able to block as well. I mean, you can nick some small incidental tokens with Condemn and Headhunter, and that basically helps you replace the cards you're losing through actually using a Condemn. Um, One thing I've noticed about Condemn, but we'll get there. Okay, we're not just doing one drops first. We're doing them in order. We're doing all the units. So, do I think it should stay as we continue with this deck and as we proceed in the future? I'd keep it in, mainly just because it's a decently statted one-cost Minotaur. The wanted poster is just an added bonus. Auric Reclaimer. The stats are really good for draft, and in Expedition, they're okay. They're middling. They're Magnificent Stranger stats. 2 cost 2/3. That's all you get. It's a Minotaur. But if you have 6, you can shift 6, and if you have any relic weapons in your graveyard, it creates a special custom relic weapon. It doesn't have any abilities, but it combines the highest attack stat in your void with the highest armor stat of in your void for weapons. So if you have like a let's say 4 attack relic weapon and actually bad example. I don't know. What's a good example? Because usually it'll just be like 4/4. So yeah, basically it makes a clone of Heirloom Blade a lot of the time. That's what it does most of the time. Or it can just make a 2/3 that's blockable. But either way, it can be some pretty decent value. And a lot of the time you're dropping this as a 2 cost 2/3 just to have that tempo. Blight Moth is awesome. It's such a good tribal hoser that it's viable main board. I mean, it's a 2 cost 1/2 flyer. That's not getting you anywhere. But once you tack on the -1/-1, maybe get two -1/-1s if they have an incidental two of the same unit or they're using tokens, um, like or tribal, it can be pretty crazy. And then the corrupted 3. So you could do it all over again. So yeah, the stats are good for what it does. It's like a cloud snake that costs 1 more, but does so much more than a cloud snake. Okay, so here we go. Dizo is kind of a perplexing card to me. It's good. I just don't understand why it's good. Like, it doesn't look like a card that would play that well. The 3 cost 1/4 unblockable body by itself, it's okay. It does some stuff. I played it like that a couple times when you have to ping for damage, but it's slow. Like even at a 3 cost, like for the 1 damage, and it blocks pretty well. But it's kind of a defensive unit, is what I'm getting at. Now, if you can pump 2 power into it, where he really like shines, oddly enough, is taking low power units off your opponent's field just so you can push in with your relic weapons. Now, it's really rare from my experiences to have like 4 or 5 extra power after playing D-Zone and be able to snatch like their best unit. Usually it's their small units, just their tiny units, or some weird defensive unit that like has really good abilities. Like that happens every once in a while. But I really like the card. It played a lot better than I thought it would. Every time I've used this card, actually, it's played better than I thought it would. But it can be a little bit awkward. Just like it's similar, now not comparable in my opinion in power level, but it's similar feeling to the 3 cost Jack, where you pay the extra 1, you do 2 damage to 2 enemies. It has that vibe. It has the same vibe. Because you're paying extra to get removal. Yeah. And then I think its stat line is better than a 2/3 that gives you treasure troves, because it's unblockable, but I mean the treasure troves are really good. Instant replacing itself. What really gets you is if they use removal on your Dizo before you can like sack the unit you've taken to Heirloom Blade or Nightmare Gates, which is another thing I should mention here. Okay, now on to Jade Horn. This card's already good, like without having such great synergy with the deck. But 3 cost 3/3 Warcry Pledge, you get 3 armor. Boom, that's enough. You pledge the crap out of this card because this deck has a little bit of faction power trouble. But if you can get a double attack off, that's like one of the main combos of the deck. Is just making a humongous weapon early, like early as turn 4, and just annihilating with it. Like on turn 5 when you drop a Jade Horn. Which I mean, you can. There's a way to get it to happen earlier than that, like, but there's not enough units. Like you don't have enough units that early. So usually about turn 5 is when you really get some crazy combos lined up, like Headhunter, Auric Reclaimer. Uh, I mean maybe Spectral Scythe into Nightmare Gates, sacking one of your cheaper units. After you sack one of your cheaper units, the Heirloom Blade. It's getting crazy now. Then you drop the Jade Horn. Like, come on. But what you can do is drop the Jade Horn and then sack it immediately to the Nightmare Gates. And then that weapon you already had on, you have the ability to, or you can drop it. Now I don't know if this works because it's never come up, but I don't know if you can sack it to Heirloom Blade after you've gotten armor, and if it'll allow you to attack twice with that Heirloom Blade. I've never had that happen, but that'd be neat. Anyway, since I haven't actually done that, I'm gonna have to try to make that happen in the future when I do further testing with this deck. Even though I've already tested this deck for the videos and stuff, I'll go on to play it. And I played it before in way different versions, like kind of jankier versions than the ones I actually put videos out on, believe it or not. But and the Corrupted 6, of course, is great. Being able to sack it twice is just awesome. That's kind of another reason why Blightmoth's really good. Relentless Gorehorn. The Revenge doesn't come up a lot, but when it does, it's great. You get so much value getting a 3/3 back. Now, just like Jade Horn, it's another Minotaur, and having 3 earlier Minotaurs that can come out in this, if you can even get it on 1, that's like 5/3 stats with a Revenge. Plus it already is a Minotaur. And if you get on 2 units, now you're talking. Like you're pushing some damage. It's got kind of, now, nowhere comparable because it doesn't have charge, but similar to like Minotaur version of Bandit Queen, if you will. And instead of charge and quick draw, it's got Revenge. And it only works on Minotaurs. But it does get +2/+0. It's like Minotaur Rally on a stick. Anyways, so let's go on. There's not too much about this card. I was just trying it out because, one, I love the card. It's like kind of a pet card of mine. I like the card a lot. And then on top of that, I just felt like if we're running Tavrod, we got all these pretty decent Minotaurs. Why not just have a little bit more synergy? Tavrod's next. And Tavrod doesn't really need too much explanation if you've seen this Minotaur in action. If it's a Minotaur deck that is in Argenport colors, Tavrod should be able to find his way into the deck. He's a 5/7 endurance, and when he attacks, you get +5 bonus on the 2 cards you draw. Keep that in mind. You get a Minotaur and then a weapon, and both of them get +5 attack. Draw them straight to your hand. Awesome, awesome card. You drop them down on 5. Even if you don't get another sigil, you pick off maybe you could get a cheap Minotaur, cheap weapon if you're lucky, or you could just get one or the other. Like you can get a Relentless Gorehorn. Relentless Gorehorn makes this guy a 7/7, and the Relentless Gorehorn ends up being an 8/3 with Revenge. And then, like, it can get crazy. Like if you could pull a Relentless Gorehorn off the top with Tavrod. Now I haven't had that happen yet, but I understand the concept of it happening. If you could pull Relentless Gorehorn off the top with Tavrod while it has Revenge and it has Destiny, since you're drawing it, you get to just play it with that and then draw a replacement card. I believe. I think that's how Destiny works. You draw the replacement. Yeah. So that can get kind of crazy. Now, it might seem like the weapons are sparse in this deck, but we do have some market cards and a couple little market weapons. And then, of course, Kenmo's blueprints in the market. Which, when it was in the main deck, I used it a lot. After I put it in the market, I didn't use it that much. So, because I normally would just be like, why don't I just grab Life Drinker? Or why don't I just grab Boot Knife? Which sounds weird, but... so we got 2 different weapons here. We got our sacking weapon, and we got our unblockable weapon. Spectral Scythe loves the buff from Nightmare Gates, which is one of the really big things about this deck. Also, this card does some damage. Just ping, ping, ping. It's similar to Dizo in that regard, just ping damage over time. Kind of like a prodigal sorcerer from Magic, if you will. So, I mean, it adds up. It adds up. And with a certain combo and enough defensive capabilities, you can make this card really shine. Heirloom Blade is amazing. Even if you play it for 6 later in the game, it's nice to just have a 4/4 weapon. But if you can get it on, like, turn 2 after a Headhunter, it can just push for so much damage, especially if you're against a slower deck that isn't getting their units off the board. You can just win the game swinging like 3 times with this early, or 2 times and killing a unit. Like this, the combinations are endless. It's amazing. It's an amazing card. You can usually get a 2/1 with this card. Let's move on to, because I mean I could talk about Heirloom Blade all the time, all day. This card is super effective. What else? Real quick before I leave, so I don't forget anything. I mean, other than that, there's sacrifice synergy in this deck. So, with the crop units and the revenge, the revenge unit, just any unit, it's decent to sack. And with Dizo, another synergy, like I said earlier, is you could just sack the unit you took. And then another thing you do a lot is swing, and then drop this. So hopefully they blocked and traded. So you can just plop this down and attack. Let's go into the Nightmare Gates now. Sacrificing a unit, once you've gotten your 3 Justice, 3 Shadow, to get +5/+5, it's amazing. This card is, just looking at the card, you're like, holy crap. I know it's part of a campaign / mini set, but it's uncommon. Like, that just blows my mind. An amazing card. Amazing card. It has to be built around, but +5/+5 is bonkers. Um, let's go to Condemn. You're probably one of the cards that people are more familiar with. Does 1 damage. It's kind of a Vara's favor, if you will. It does like synergize with like the fact that it gives it void bound, so it can like be like anti graveyard or anti recursion, which can be good. And then your options are boot knife or seek power, because I have a dual market, which I usually use it for seek power. A couple things I ran into that are problems is I kept thinking one was the other and the other was one for how like what cost card I took from the market, but it ended up being all right. And then Fearless Crescendo, a lot of the same. Giving Tavrod flying is pretty nice. I mean, he doesn't super need it, but just a number of the other units. After you've buffed a unit with Tavrod, it can be pretty nice to just fly over. Um, and then you got your Kenmo's Blueprint, Life Drinker, Treasury Gate. I'll go over those. One thing of note, I never played Treasury Gate. Never got it out. And yeah, never got it out. And then let's go with Slay. Much like the inclusion from in Kalibovich's deck, I just want the same reasoning. It kills everything, just like he says. There's no conditions, and it's very, very efficiently costed. This card is excellent. A really great pickup at uncommon if you're building on a budget too, for the record. We got kind of an even split here. A little bit less justice, of course, because we have the pledges from Jadehorn. Shadow sigils. Um, and then we got, of course, our insignias and our seats. And then let's go over this real quick. I played Boot Knife surprisingly a lot. Was it good? It was okay. When you can get Nightmare Gates off on it, it's amazing. And it's like if it's the only weapon you can get, it feels amazing. But other than that, it's usually pretty bad, honestly. When I first put this, like way, way, way when I first was experimenting with this, I did not know it was an onslaught ability, so that messed me up a couple times. So just make sure you read this card before you include it. It's usually considered extremely bad. I think in this deck, it becomes mediocre to okay. Honestly, there's too much synergy for this thing to be good. One thing that's kind of nice is with Tavrod, when I was running it in the main deck, that is possible to just get a humongous quick draw weapon with really, really low armor though. So it will die on the bash back. Seek Power, I don't think this card needs any explanation. It is amazing. Amazing fixing. It's just any power you want depleted. It's really great in 3-color decks, or 3-faction decks. 2-faction decks is really good. Some people may think it's kind of slow, especially when you got seats and origin port insignias. But I think it's a great card. And in the market, you don't have to worry about drawing it and not being able to play it for like a second, because you want to play on curve. Okay, Kenmo's Blueprints. I use this a couple of times. What was that? Oh, it was the game's music. I was like, is my phone ringing? No, it's not. Anyways, Kenmo's Blueprints. I used this a couple times. When it was in the main deck, like I said, it was bonkers. I thought this card was kind of going to be silly or garbage or bad. It would have some work. It is not quite Dragonforge. Not quite Dragonforge. But the Onslaught does come up a little bit, and the fast speed came up less than I thought it would. This being a slow spell didn't really matter as much as I thought it would. Moving on, Life Drinker. Played this a good bit. A lot of the decks I faced in the ladder with this deck happened to be slower decks, it felt like. It just felt like it was slow deck after slow deck, or like value deck after value deck. So, I mean, Life Drinker was okay. A 2/2 weapon's pretty junky. Now, if you can give this on the turn it comes out Nightmare Gates, that's a big swing, no matter what you're facing, mid-range or aggro. Treasure Gate. I really wanted this card to be good. I would probably have to build more towards it, but I just feel like if there's a deck that would like this, just having that Minotaur synergy with Relentless Gorehorn might be good. Only problem is it has no synergy with Tavrod. And that's the whole deck. I loved this deck. It was very fun. I want to thank Kelebovich again. just for letting me do a deck like this, deck tech example, everything from the try the deck to the test the deck, and finally now the tech the deck. If you like the video, go ahead and like and subscribe if you want more content like this. I really appreciate y'all. Have a great night. Thank you so much, and good night.